Americans kill Americans on the battlefield. Terrorists overrun an entire city in Iraq. And is President Obama trying to throw his Pentagon chief under the bus? This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Bret Baier. President Obama continues to get an earful from congressional lawmakers who didn't hear a thing about the prisoner swap that sent 5 Taliban leaders back to the Middle East, a region that erupted today with new violence, including terrorists overtaking an entire city once patrolled by U.S. troops. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Jennifer Griffin's at the Pentagon with the tragic details of a deadly friendly fire incident in Afghanistan. Mike Emanuel at the Capitol with who knew about the prisoner swap that freed 5 Taliban leaders while Congress did not. But we begin with Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry, and the president still paying a price for not picking up the phone. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. Those questions about the prisoner swap keep coming for the White House. The answers keep evolving. How are you?
As President Obama escaped the White House yet again today, this time for burgers, his aides continue to get grilled over the Taliban prisoner swap and why Congress was not kept completely in the loop by the president.
He made no apologies for closely holding the details, the precise operational details of the secret military mission.
Except that shifts the goalpost from the fact that Republicans and Democrats have actually asked for a heads up about the swap of 5 Taliban commanders for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl.
Can you name one member of Congress, a Democrat or Republican, who has demanded operational details of the military mission?
I'm not in a position to I mean, you can ask them if that's something that they would be interested in.
Citing that as a reason to not inform Congress about this swap. Yes, you are.
What I was making clear, Ed, is that we had repeatedly consulted with members of Congress.
The top Republican on the House Armed Services panel, Buck McKeon, also demanded to know why, at a closed-door briefing, top administration officials seemed to insulate the president and pass the buck to Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel.
The briefers from the various departments were asked who made the final decision, and they said Secretary Hagel. So I hope they're not just pushing him out to be a fall guy for this. We'll get a chance to talk to him.
Until Hagel testifies before the Armed Services Committee tomorrow, White House officials are vague on whether the president specifically signed off on the swap.
But the president's the commander-in-chief, and the president's the one that's ultimately responsible for making sure that we fulfill this commitment, that we don't leave anybody behind.
The tension comes amid other major foreign policy struggles, including Iraq, where an al-Qaeda offshoot launched a major offensive that the State Department initially downplayed Monday.
I don't get the sense that they're gaining a lot of territory.
And then a second State Department spokeswoman, Jen Psaki, today said the group, the Islamic State of Iraq, has, quote, taken over significant parts of Mosul. Retired General Jack Keane says the administration needs to get up to speed fast.
This is the largest and most menacing al-Qaeda sanctuary that they have ever established, to include what they had in Afghanistan prior to 9/11.
Now, breaking tonight, the New York Times has just published an op-ed that's blistering over the president's Syria policy. The writer says hesitation has hastened the day when American forces will have to go fight al-Qaeda inside Syria. The writer's not a critic. The writer is Robert Ford, the former ambassador to Syria for this president, a sign that the trouble over his foreign policy continues. Brett.
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. Lawmakers from both parties are still looking for answers tonight, as we said, about being out of the loop on that prisoner swap. And now we're learning just how many other people were in the loop. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel reports that is just one of the many complaints he's hearing on the Hill from both sides of the aisle.
Following closed-door briefings on the Bo Bergdahl trade, leading Republicans are convinced at least some of the newly released Taliban 5 will return to the fight.
We're going to pay for this. There is not any doubt in my mind there are going to be costs, lost lives associated with what came out of this.
The Senate's top Democrat wasn't willing to make bold predictions about the detainees long term.
I'm not going to be in the situation here of giving you some prophetic announcement as what these 5 men are going to do later on.
One of the headlines out of last night's session with House lawmakers was the number of White House, defense, and state officials who were in the loop, even though Congress wasn't consulted.
Probably the most distressing thing, or most disturbing thing I heard was at least 80 to 90 people in the administration were aware this proposed deal.
The White House says that's the number of officials who had access to broader intelligence on the Taliban. Meanwhile, leading congressional Democrats who also weren't aware say the swap logistics came together quickly.
The actual detailed location of where the pickup would take place, I think, was a few hours before. A day or two before, they knew the general location where it was supposed to take place.
When it resurfaced as a possibility, they should have brought members of Congress in and said, hey, we're thinking about this. Now, I know why they didn't. They didn't because they don't trust us.
Administration ally Democratic House Whip Steny Hoyer told reporters today, if only the administration had picked up the phone, fewer people would be so critical. For now, supporters aren't left with much cover.
I thank the president. I think America thanks the president for having brought Bowe Bergdahl back home to his parents.
Key lawmakers say the administration isn't revealing a better argument even behind closed doors.
There was nothing in the briefing that I heard that was not already in the public domain. I do not know why the hearing was classified.
The Senate's second Democrat, Dick Durbin, tells Fox that the administration should have military commanders in uniform publicly make the case for the Bergdahl transfer, clearly a recognition that members of Bergdahl's unit have had a major impact on public opinion. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thank you. Defense officials are scrambling to come up with answers after another apparent case of friendly fire in Afghanistan. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest tonight from the Pentagon.
It is the single deadliest incident of friendly fire since the Afghan war began. 5 American special operators were killed in Zabul province today. The Americans were embedded with Afghan forces, which is now a standard practice as the U.S. attempts to hand over the lead to the Afghan military.
We do have reason to suspect that friendly fire was the cause here, specifically friendly fire from the air, but the issue's under investigation.
U.S. defense officials say the U.S. troops were killed after calling in an American B-1 bomber for close air support after coming under fire from Taliban fighters. Initial reports suggest the bomb or bombs missed their target, killing the Americans and at least 1 Afghan who was working alongside the U.S. troops.
Oh, it just makes me so sick. You know, it's bad enough to lose anybody, but if these reports turn out to be accurate, that it was friendly fire, there was some kind of mistake, it just compounds the grief and just the sense of horror about what's going on over there.
Just last week, Taliban suicide bombers attacked the convoy of the leading Afghan presidential candidate, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, who has said he would sign a security agreement allowing U.S. troops to stay in Afghanistan after the end of this year. In remarks this weekend when asked to defend the release of 5 top Taliban leaders from Guantanamo Bay as part of the Bowe Bergdahl deal, Secretary of State John Kerry pushed back on the idea that the Taliban leaders who were released would make any difference to the fight.
We are ending our combat role. Our combat role in Afghanistan is over. We're going to have very few, people in that kind of position.
36 NATO service members have been killed so far this year in Afghanistan. 8 troops were killed in June alone. Nearly 10,000 U.S. troops will remain in Afghanistan at the end of this year. Brett.
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. The Pakistani Taliban is warning the violence is not over yet. Gunmen attacked a training facility for airport police today in Karachi. Sunday night, insurgents killed 26 people in an assault on the airport. Up next, Hillary Clinton tries to explain her comment about being dead broke following her husband's presidency. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. Fox 12 in Portland, Oregon, with a deadly school shooting in suburban Troutville. Police say a gunman shot and killed a high school student this morning on the next to last day of the semester. The shooter was also killed, but police are not yet saying how. Fox 11 in Los Angeles, where a judge struck down tenure and other job protections for California's public school teachers as unconstitutional. He says such laws harm students, especially poor and minority ones, by saddling them with bad teachers. It's a big loss for the union there. And this is a live look at St. Louis from Fox 2. The big story across the river in Illinois, Governor Pat Quinn signing the so-called cupcake bill, allowing people to sell their homemade baked goods. The legislation was inspired by a Troy, Illinois girl whose home cupcake business was shut down by the health department. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.